What's up everyone, welcome back to another video. This is ZazaBeast, and today we're diving deep into one of the most intricate and fascinating power systems in modern web fiction, the 22 Beyonder pathways from Lord of the Mysteries. Now, if you've never heard of Lord of the Mysteries, it's a Chinese web novel that's been taking the Western fantasy community by storm, and for good reason. The author, Cuttlefish That Loves Diving, has created what might be the most detailed and interconnected magic system I've ever encountered. Before we dive into individual pathways, let's establish the fundamentals. In the world of Lord of the Mysteries, supernatural power comes through Beyonder characteristics, essentially crystallized supernatural essence that allows ordinary humans to transcend their limitations and become Beyonders. Each pathway consists of 10 sequences, numbered from 9 to 0. You start at sequence 9 as basically a supernatural rookie, and as you climb towards sequence 0, you become increasingly godlike. But here's the catch, and this is what makes this system brilliant. You can't just randomly consume any potion. The pathways are grouped into what's called adjacent pathways, and attempting to deviate from your path or consume the wrong potion will result in you losing control and becoming a monster. The 22 pathways are organized into groups of 2 or 3, and at the highest levels, sequences 2, 1, and 0, these adjacent pathways can actually interchange. It's like they're branches of the same cosmic tree that eventually merge back together. The Fool, Door, and Error pathways. Let's start with our protagonist's pathway, the Fool. This is pathway number 0, and it's absolutely central to the entire story. The Fool pathway is all about manipulation of fate, history, and reality itself. At sequence 9, you're a simple fortune teller. But by the time you reach sequence 0, the Fool, you're essentially a god of mysteries and fate. What makes the Fool pathway special is its connection to the mysterious space above the gray fog, which serves as a divine kingdom of sorts. The abilities include divination, historical projection, manipulating probability, and at higher sequences, literally rewriting parts of history. Adjacent to the Fool is the Door pathway, which focuses on spatial manipulation and teleportation. A Sequence 9 apprentice can perform basic magic tricks, but a Sequence 0 Door can manipulate space on a cosmic scale. Then there's the Error pathway, masters of deception, illusion, and misdirection, who can eventually manipulate the very concept of correctness and error. These 3 pathways represent different aspects of manipulation: fate, space, and truth, respectively. The Tyrant, Sailor, and Lightning pathways. Moving on to the Storm and Sea-themed pathways. The Tyrant pathway embodies absolute authority over storms and the ocean. Starting as a Sequence 9 sailor, you gradually gain dominion over weather, lightning, and eventually become a god of storms. The Church of the Lord of Storms follows this pathway, and their abilities are as dramatic as they sound, calling down lightning, summoning tsunamis, controlling wind and rain. The Sailor pathway is closely related, but focuses more on navigation, survival at sea, and maritime combat. These Beyonders become masters of the ocean, capable of sailing through any storm and finding their way across impossible distances. The Lightning pathway rounds out this group with pure electrical manipulation. While it might seem similar to Tyrant at first glance, Lightning focuses more on speed, precision, and the raw power of electricity, rather than the broader concept of storms. The Sun, Secret Suppliant, and Bard pathways. Now we get to some really interesting thematic groupings. The Sun pathway is exactly what it sounds like. These Beyonders wield light, purification, and holy power. They are natural enemies of creatures of darkness and corruption. A Sequence 9 Bard, yes, that's their starting sequence, can inspire others and create minor illusions through performance. But a Sequence 0 Sun is a blazing deity of purification and light. Wait, did I say Bard? That's because the Sun pathway shares adjacency with the Bard pathway, which focuses on performance, inspiration, and emotional manipulation through art and music. It's a support-focused pathway that becomes incredibly powerful at higher sequences. The Secret's suppliant pathway completes this triad, focusing on uncovering hidden knowledge, ancient secrets, and forbidden truths. These Beyonders are natural scholars and investigators of the supernatural. What's fascinating about these three is how they represent different approaches to enlightenment: purification, inspiration, and knowledge. The Visionary, Hanged Man, and Hermit pathways. Here's where things get really cerebral. The Visionary pathway is all about mental manipulation and mind control. A Sequence 9 spectator can read emotions and surface thoughts, but by Sequence 0, a Visionary can manipulate the collective unconscious of entire civilizations. This is the pathway of the psychological alchemists, and their abilities are terrifyingly subtle. The Hanged Man pathway focuses on sacrifice, endurance, and gaining power through suffering. It's a dark path that often involves literal hanging and near-death experiences to advance. The abilities center around curses, bindings, and turning suffering into strength. The Hermit pathway represents isolation, wisdom gained through solitude, and mastery over hidden knowledge. These Beyonders often become reclusive scholars who accumulate vast supernatural knowledge through careful study and experimentation. Together, these three pathways explore different aspects of the mind and spirit: control, sacrifice, and solitude. The Warrior, Hunter, and Apothecary pathways. Now we move into more straightforward, combat-oriented pathways. The Warrior pathway is probably the most direct. These are your classic fantasy fighters who excel in physical combat. But don't mistake simplicity for weakness. A Sequence 0 warrior, known as the Red Priest, commands armies and can reshape battlefields with their presence alone. The Hunter pathway focuses on tracking, assassination, and precision combat. These Beyonders are natural predators who excel at finding and eliminating specific targets. Their abilities include enhanced senses, camouflage, and devastating long-range attacks. The Apothecary pathway might seem like support, but it's actually one of the most versatile pathways in the entire system. These Beyonders master poisons, healing, and the manipulation of life force itself. At higher sequences, they can create artificial life and manipulate biological processes on a massive scale. These three pathways represent different aspects of conflict: direct confrontation, precision elimination, and biological warfare. The Lawyer, Arbiter, and Black Emperor pathways. Here's where Lord of the Mysteries shows its sophistication. The Lawyer pathway isn't about legal proceedings. It's about the fundamental concept of rules and order. These Beyonders can exploit loopholes in reality itself, manipulate contracts and agreements, and, at higher sequences, literally rewrite the laws of physics in localized areas. The Arbiter pathway focuses on judgment and balance. These Beyonders can weigh souls, determine truth from lies, and enforce cosmic justice. They're natural judges who can see through deception and enforce fair outcomes. The Black Emperor pathway is all about dominion and tyrannical rule. Despite the ominous name, this isn't necessarily evil. It's about absolute authority and the power to impose order through strength. A Sequence 0 Black Emperor rules not just people, but concepts themselves. Together, these pathways explore different aspects of order and authority: manipulation of rules, fair judgment, and absolute dominion. The Death and Demoness pathways. The Death pathway is straightforward but profound. These Beyonders command death, undeath, and the boundary between life and death. Starting as a Sequence 9 corpse collector, they gradually gain power over spirits, zombies, and eventually death itself. At Sequence 0, they become a literal death god. The Demoness pathway is one of the most controversial in the series. These Beyonders gain power through embracing various forms of corruption and taboo. Male Beyonders on this pathway gradually transform into females as they advance, and their abilities focus on charm, assassination, and psychological manipulation. It's a pathway that explores the darker aspects of desire and temptation. These two pathways represent endings and corruption, the natural conclusion of life and the perversion of natural order. The Mother, Moon, and Chained Pathways. The Mother pathway embodies fertility, creation, and nurturing power. But don't mistake this for weakness. The creative force can be just as terrifying as any destructive power. These Beyonders can accelerate growth, create life, and at higher sequences, birth entirely new species or even concepts. The Moon pathway focuses on illusion, dreams, and the liminal spaces between reality and fantasy. These Beyonders can manipulate dreams, create powerful illusions, and eventually blur the line between what's real and what's imagined. The Chained pathway represents binding, restriction, and control through limitation. These Beyonders can create supernatural contracts, bind spirits and entities, and enforce restrictions on reality itself. Together, these pathways explore creation, illusion, and control, the forces that shape and constrain reality. The uniqueness and true God concepts. Now, here's where the system gets really complex. At the highest levels of each pathway, there exists something called uniqueness, a singular characteristic that represents the absolute peak of that pathway's concept. Only one person can hold the uniqueness of each pathway at any given time. To become a true God, sequence 0, you need not only the uniqueness of your pathway, but also the sequence 1 characteristics of the two adjacent pathways. This creates a system where true gods embody not just one concept, but the fusion of 3 related concepts. For example, the Lord of Mysteries, the sequence 0 of the Fool pathway, would need the uniqueness of the Fool plus the sequence 1 characteristics of Door and Error. This creates a god who embodies mystery, space, and deception as a unified concept. The Great Old Ones and Outer Gods. But wait, there's more. Above even the true gods exist the Great Old Ones and Outer Gods. Being so powerful, they exist beyond the normal constraints of the pathway system. These entities represent fundamental forces of the universe and often serve as the source of multiple pathways. The most terrifying aspect of this cosmology is that advancing too far or too quickly can result in losing control and becoming a puppet of these higher beings. The pathway system isn't just about gaining power. It's about walking a tightrope between transcendence and annihilation.